regarding racism in the Conservative Party. Does Boris's one bounce and you're out not apply to him?
And Matthew Hinton, where are you?
Here. What are we to make of Jeremy Corbyn's repeated refusal on the Andrew Neil show to apologise for the anti-Semitism he has presided over?
Right. Well, I'm not going to start with you. Lana, I'm going to start with you on that.
Yeah, I watched that interview. Corbyn didn't look good. I don't quite understand why he didn't apologise in that he's apologised before. And I recognize that there are two different kinds of apology. There's the kind where you say you're sorry, you're regretful, and you're sorry it's your fault. And I think he's very reluctant to make the latter kind of apology.
And what about the first question regarding racism in the Conservative Party?
I have found the evidence of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party more persuasive. That is, it's more of an institutional problem than I find the sporadic evidence in the Tory Party. If nothing else, you know, the Chancellor of the Exchequer is Muslim, and that's the second most powerful position. Well, Muslim background.
I mean, Saeed Avarsi has said...
a powerful position in the country.
I mean, Saeed Avarsi in the Conservative Party said dossier after dossier, dozens and dozens of cases being presented with the most vile evidence of racism within the party, the Conservative Party, at every level, from members of Parliament all the way down to ordinary activists. So she certainly feels there's quite a bit of it. Caroline?
Well, I think that racism in all its forms is obviously vile and unacceptable, and we need to do everything we possibly can to stamp it out. I think the idea that because there's a minister from a particular faith, a minister in this case who is Muslim, somehow that lets off the rest of the party from being able to have to live up to better standards. And we know that there has been an uprise in racism around the times when Boris Johnson does refer to Muslim women wearing burqas as letterboxes and so forth. That is evidence-based. So it goes back, in a sense, to the question we were just having.
Why is that so insulting? It's just an image. He was being lighthearted. It gets taken out of context.
Well, tell you what, hang on. Let's ask the woman in the audience.
You want to talk about that? What about the rhetoric you use about people in letterboxes when I walk down the street and I get told after that to go back to my own country?
Exactly.
I am from here. I am from here. When I get from that rhetoric, I get told to go back to my own country.
That was an image.
Take responsibility.
That was an image taken.
And you are spreading hate by saying that. What is wrong with saying it's a letterbox? You're spreading hate and racism.
I'm just saying, this is not a standard slur.
It's not a joke.
It
you
is
shouldn't
a
mock
single
someone's
image.
religion. You should not mock someone's religion.
Did you read the original op-ed? Did you read the piece? He was standing up for Muslim women's right to wear whatever they want.
That also
Why is that racist?
That also includes the niqab. And there's consequence to what you say.
He wanted you to be able to wear the niqab.
I get abused in the street, and I'm talking on behalf of many Muslims. I get told to go back to I get physically assaulted just walking to the gym in broad daylight. There's consequences to saying something like that.
Brian?
Because it's comments from you.
I don't see how you
I need to get to Brian.
I am very sorry to hear about your experience, but I can't see how you can blame Boris Johnson.
Well, Brandon, this is clearly the man who would be Prime Minister. I mean, this is not the first time this has come up on the programme, I have to say.
Well,
and he said one bounce and you're out. Does that not apply to himself? That was the question.
And one bouncing out is how our party has acted. I have to say, whenever the party has found somebody in our party who has acted in a way that is abusive or wrong about any religion or any race, somebody who's experienced bullying, somebody who's, my descendants come from the Jewish, so anything like that is completely unacceptable, and you should not ever have to suffer from anybody the kind of abuse you are talking about.
But there's consequences
I have to say,
to the actions of what you say.
Yeah.
Do you not understand that?
I do
no
understand.
Apologies
I have
as
to say,
well.
I do believe that there are repercussions to what we say, and we as politicians have to think about the language we use. But I would also defend the Prime Minister's right, and any politician's right, to actually use language to make a point. And that particular...
So are you defending the right for him to say that women look like letterboxes?
The point I was going to make, if I can finish it, is the article he wrote, which I don't think from the way you've read it, is worth reading. It was an article arguing for people having the right to wear what they want, not to be forced into wearing something or not wearing
doesn't really
something,
matter. It was the
which
choice
actually
of
is a very,
words.
very important point. And I think is right for us as a liberal society. People should have the right to wear what they want. But in the Conservative
But they
Party,
can't
and this
wear
is
what
one of
they
the things I
want.
have to say I'm very, very proud of in the Conservative Party, and people talked about dossiers, but I've got to say, my experience with it was there's often a big difference between the reality and what people say, because somebody online saying something doesn't mean they're a member of our party. But actually, we have dealt with cases. If we find somebody who's acting in a way that's inappropriate, whatever type of inappropriate behaviour that is, that has been dealt with, it's been dealt with swiftly, not these tons and tons of cases sitting around for sometimes, like Ken Livingstone, years, not being dealt with by the Labour Party. That is quite a different situation, and I think it's abhorrent to see what we saw on Andrew Neil the other night.
OK, well, that was the other question. So why did Jeremy Corbyn... He has apologised before in a meaningful way. Why was he not able to do that on Andrew Neil?
I'm glad you acknowledged that, because he has acknowledged and apologised on several occasions for the hurt caused to members of the Jewish community.
So why... It was a kind of awkward moment, wasn't it? Why did he just not say, I'm sorry?
He has said he is sorry. He is sorry that it has happened.
The question was, why didn't he say it when asked
He's not
on
used
Monday night?
weasel words about it. You know, when you hear people say, I'm sorry for any offence that may have been caused.
No, and I've made that clear. So why didn't he say... The question is, why was he unable to say sorry on Monday night?
We can't get through. Because what he's trying to do is, having made those apologies, publish them, and he repeated them the following day, by the way, is to get on to the proactive measures that we want to take as an incoming government to give those protections to the Jewish community.
But you can still say sorry and then talk about that as well.
We've saying sorry, and we've made that apology, but I think it's very, very important to set out exactly the steps that we'll be taking in terms of the protections afforded to places of worship, of education, and to address the whole issues, the whole gamut of anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, other forms of racism in our national curriculum to ensure that we start building that capacity. But quite frankly, for this denial over this terrible choice of words about letterboxes, I'm not bothered about the article. It's the choice of the words that have been used. And as a direct result of those offensive comments, you know, hate crimes increased. People were assaulted because of the words chosen by the Prime Minister. And we now see this slew of articles in The Spectator that have been unearthed about his rampant misogyny and his abuse of women. It's an absolute outrage, and I don't see the same attention paid.
I think there was a poll out this week that said a third of voters consider both Jeremy Corbyn and Boris Johnson to be racist. A third. That is it's just appalling. The two people who are one of whom is most likely to be the next Prime Minister, a third of voters think they were racist. So I think we have a real problem, and I think there's a real problem on both sides. I think in the Labour Party, it is an institutionalised problem that has come in the last few years with the arrival of Momentum and Jeremy Corbyn. Let me just finish.
Let me just finish.
Were
incidents.
Well, let's make a point.
MPs have been hounded out of the party. And yes, there's talk of looking into things, but there is, I think, when you have the chief rabbi speaking out as he did this week, it suggests there is a very serious problem. Now, there is also a problem in the Tory party, and the choice of words by Boris Johnson on this subject and indeed on others is, appalling. And there's no way of going around it. It's a stain on the Tory party. And during the leadership campaign, Boris Johnson said there would be an independent inquiry into Islamophobia in the party. And to my knowledge, that has not happened. So I think in both cases, the parties are falling really radically short of where they should be.
OK, just a minute. Well, there's going to be an inquiry, but it's not independent, and it's into... it's into all forms of prejudice, not just into Islamophobia, as was promised on television, live television, I think. Yes, the woman there.
Jeremy Corbyn made an apology back in 2008, and it just seems to me that it doesn't matter how many times he apologises, it's never enough. What happens to forgiveness? Why does somebody have to keep on saying the same thing over and over again and not being believed? There are two black women that sit regularly on the front benches with Jeremy Corbyn. If there was rampant racism in the Labour Party, I'm sure they would have known about it and identified it. I don't believe that he gets a fair deal from the media or the press in terms of that. We know that these media moguls sit there wanting to protect their position and their millions that they park off overseas in offshore accounts, and they see him as a threat to that position. And that's what this is all about. And quite frankly, I'm sick and tired of it. I see it go on a regular basis, the continual pummeling of Jeremy Corbyn for no good reason. And it just seems to me that people just don't understand or recognise a decent person when they see one anymore. They want people to keep on being nasty and spiteful and evil all the time. And it's not right.
Well, I can see people...
get back to decent values.
I can see people agreeing with you, certainly the sentiment, people agreeing on some of it and shaking their head at some of it as well.